as President of the United States, I proclaim Sunday, September the 2nd, 1945, to be VJ Day.
Aloha and welcome to this special presentation from Hawaii News Now. Today marks 75 years since the end of World War II. Japan surrendered on board the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. That was on September 2nd, 1945. An invite-only ceremony is planned at Pearl Harbor today. Let's give you a live look at what's happening right now outside. Now, we do know that the ceremony is starting at 9 o'clock, and you can see what a beautiful day it is right now. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper is getting ready to deliver the keynote address in just a few minutes from now. Other speakers include Admiral Philip Davison, Commander of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, as well as Hawaii Governor Ige. Our Jim Mendoza looks back at the legacy of the last battleship commissioned by the U.S., the USS Missouri.
Anchored off Ford Island sits the USS Missouri, one of the most storied ships in America's military history. The battleship was built during the height of World War II at a Navy yard in New York.
Fastest and most modern warship afloat, the 45,000-ton Missouri goes down the ways months ahead of schedule.
The ship was a late entry into the war. She was the last battleship ever commissioned by the United States.
Launched in January 1944, the Missouri could carry more than 1,900 sailors and Marines and was heavily armed.
And the ship was covered with, I don't know how many, 20 and 40 millimeter guns that were at that time for close air support, air defense against, incoming aircraft. This was the state-of-the-art battleship.
Under the command of Captain William Callahan, the Mighty Mo fought at Iwo Jima. In the Battle of Okinawa, it was attacked by enemy planes flying suicide missions. One slammed into the ship.
The pilot's body was recovered, and instead of just tossing the body overboard, which the crew initially wanted to do, the captain of the ship, William Callahan, stopped them and said, no, we're going to give this young man a proper burial.
In July of 1945, the Missouri assisted in the bombardment of Japan. Then in September of that year, it sailed into Tokyo Bay to host Japan's historic surrender.
World War II ended in a ceremony that took a total of 20 minutes.
General Douglas MacArthur presided over the proceedings.
We are gathered here, representatives of the major warring powers, to conclude a solemn agreement whereby peace may be restored.
It was really a ceremony of reconciliation, and so that's why this ship has become a symbol of peace rather than an instrument of war.
For the next 4 years, the battleship was in and out of dry dock. It joined training exercises and served in ceremonies until the Navy sent it back to battle during the Korean War.
She's clearly one of the most famous ships in the U.S. Navy.
In 1955, the Missouri was decommissioned and placed in mothballs. But it was needed again for the Gulf War.
This ship fired some of the first shots in the Gulf War by pounding the beaches of Kuwait for the better part of a week to make it seem like they were softening up the beaches for an amphibious landing.
The last official episode in the Missouri's life happened in 1991 during the 50th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. In 1992, it was decommissioned for the second and final time. The USS Missouri Memorial Association is the battleship's caretaker.
Maintaining the ship is our primary mission objective, to preserve the battleship Missouri.
The ship's superstructure has undergone extensive renovations. More than half of its 50,000 square feet of teak decks were restored, and there have been many repairs to the Missouri's interior.
Over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, we've spent over $12 million on this ship, just in capital costs.
A popular visitor attraction, 80% of the association's revenue comes from ticket sales. But COVID-19 has forced the nonprofit to dip into its financial reserves and to pause big projects.
We're a visitor industry attraction. That's where the bulk of our revenue comes from. Historically, and so this COVID shutdown has made these challenges even harder for us.
In 2012, the ship starred in the sci-fi action film Battleship. You can't tell from the edits, but during segments at sea, it was being towed by a tugboat. The Mighty Mo is now a floating museum and a resource for school groups.
We call it hands-on history, where students can stand where the kamikaze airplane struck the ship, and they can stand in the footsteps of MacArthur and Nimitz right here on the surrender deck.
There's also a virtual education program.
But they can learn about the history of the battleship Missouri even from sitting at their computers at home.
The USS Missouri occupies an important place in America's past. From its deck where Japan surrendered, you can see the Arizona Memorial.
Very few places in our country where you can really get this visceral sense of history that you can here. You can feel it when you're standing here.
That was our Jim Mendoza reporting. When we come back, we're going to take a look at another significant monument at Pearl Harbor as we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. The ceremony commemorating the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, that begins in just a few minutes from now. The two battleships that marked the beginning and the end of the war are both at Pearl Harbor. The Pearl Harbor National Memorial's chief historian tells us just how special the USS Missouri and USS Arizona are to this day.
You pause and reflect when you visit these places. When you go to the Missouri and you venture up towards the bow, you have this incredible view of the USS Arizona. People can see for the first time an elevated view of the memorial they don't see when they go aboard it. And then they also are reminded of the role, the beginning and the end of World War II right there within 200 yards of each ship.
The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
There are really two primary days in the Pacific War, that is, the beginning of it on December 7th, 1941, and the ending of it on September 2nd, 1945. When the ceremonies take place aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, it is a solemn time. You can see no one there celebrating, but rather the solemnness of bringing this war to an end, World War II, the war in the Pacific.
Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always.
And to go aboard the Missouri and look at where that plaque was placed, a seminal part of time ended and was remembered right here. The Missouri itself rests at a very historic place because she's on Battleship Row, and she's where the battleship Oklahoma was, exactly almost right over her. And although the ship was removed, much of her wreckage, her upper tops and some of her guns, were ground into the mud. The spirit of the Oklahoma is underneath that ship. When she's out there resting on Battleship Row, it is a reminder of the great battleships that were here on December 7th, 1941. It's just striking that when you look at that memorial that Alfred Price designed, it just is so reflective as a white object on this aqua water, and then the faint path of oil still leaking from her wound still fresh after all these years. These are places where men risked their lives, and in some cases lost their lives. They're these centurions of history, and we come to honor them. It's one of those places that I've often said, if you allow yourself to touch history, in turn it will touch you.
Our thanks to Pearl Harbor Chief Historian Daniel Martinez, whom you just saw, for all of his insight and his expertise. The ceremony is set to get underway in just a couple of minutes from now. We're going to bring it to you live here on KGMB, KHNL, and K5. Stay with us.
as President of the United States, I proclaim Sunday, September the 2nd, 1945, to be VJ Day.
Good morning, I'm Grace Lee. We want to welcome you to a special Hawaii News Now presentation of the 75th commemoration of the end of World War II. We want to take you live now to Pearl Harbor, where the ceremony is currently getting underway.
Thank you. Please take your seats. I did. I'll repeat. I'll repeat for all military personnel in uniform, this is an indoor, uncovered ceremony. Veterans, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, aloha and welcome to the Battleship Missouri Memorial here at historic Pearl Harbor. It is 9:02 a.m., the moment 75 years ago when this ceremony began on this ship. As you may have heard and seen, the Legacy of Peace aerial parade by many World War II warbirds kicked off this morning's ceremony with just a short time ago across Oahu skies. My name is Michael CARR. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of the USS Missouri Memorial Association. It's an honor to serve in that capacity and to be your MC for today's ceremony as we commemorate a huge milestone, the 75th anniversary of one of the most significant events in history, the ending of World War II. First and foremost, I have the honor of welcoming our special guests, the World War II veterans who are with us here today. I'm going to name them individually and ask that you stand, if you're able, as your name is called, and remain standing. Please hold your applause till the end so we may honor them collectively for their service, for their courage, and for their sacrifice. Mr. Refugio Alcon, Victor Ariola, Oscar Bangui, Saldme Calderon, Walter Ching, Jack Detour, Paul Newman, Wendell Newman, Theodore Richardson, Arthur Schack, Lambert Y, and Joseph Young. Ladies and gentlemen, our World War II veterans. It's an honor to have you in our company today. The following World War II veterans also call Hawaii home, but unfortunately were unable to join us in person for today's ceremony. I'd like to take just a moment to recognize them by name. They are Julio Ramon, Arthur Ching, Raymond Ching, Narzal Concepcion, Rodrigo Diaz, and William Lum. Next, I want to recognize our World War II veterans who had made plans to travel from the mainland and join us here today on the Battleship Missouri Memorial, including 14 veterans who witnessed the ceremony on September 2nd, 1945. In the end, these heroes were unable to travel due to concerns for their health as a result of the COVID-19 virus. We're very saddened to have to make that call, but it was done for the sake of their health. Please turn your attention to the screens as we honor them. Fame Academia, Seaman Euler, Petty Officer First Class, U.S. Merchant Marines, U.S. Navy, Manila, Philippines, Subic Bay. Carlisle Agrigilius, Corporal Marine Corps, Los Angeles, California. Gordon Barker, MM-3C, Navy, Springfield, Massachusetts. Albert Bloomer, Second Class, U.S. Navy Gunner's Mate, Dunaba, California. Doyle Boothroyd, Airman Second Class, Navy, Goodland, Kansas. Thomas Bristol, Sergeant, Army Air Corps, Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Jack Brock, S-1, Navy, Los Angeles, California. Lee Broussard, Y-3C, Navy, Laurelville, Louisiana. Edgar Buffman, Gunner's Mate Second Class, Navy, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Robert Chapman, PFC, St. Louis, Missouri. Andre Chapaz, Tech 5, U.S. Army, San Francisco, California. James Climo, Staff Sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps, Los Angeles, California. Judge Davis, Seaman First Class, U.S. Navy, Division F, Union City, Tennessee. Donato De Filippis, Seaman First Class, Navy, Brooklyn, New York. Arthur Del Rey, O.M. Mike, Navy, Pasadena, California. Farland Duberry, Sergeant First Class, Army 96th, Seattle, Washington. Lindsay Edwards, FC-3 Navy, Gentry, Arkansas. Herbert Elfring, Captain Army, 251st Coast Artillery, San Diego, California. Manuel Flores, Buck Sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps, Boston, Massachusetts. Donald Fosberg, S-2C, Radio Max Navy, Los Angeles, California. Armando Gallela, Sergeant Major, Army, North Tarrytown, New York. Richard Grantham, Quartermaster Third Class, Navy, Pasadena, California. Edward Greenfield, Lieutenant, Navy, New York, New York. Chester Gross, Seaman First Class, Navy, New Caney, Texas. William Haller, AOM-2, Navy, Martinsville, New Jersey.
We knew a possibility we may not come back, but we didn't dwell on that. We dwelled on the fact that we're going in to end the war in our favor. And that's what we did. So that winning the war meant keeping American freedom.
You could not get a better education than going into the service and fight for your country that you believe in. If you live anywhere in the world besides America, you'll know the reason why. There's no other place better than the good old USA.
Haley, Pharmacist Mate Third Class, Navy Medical Corpsman, Huntsville, Missouri. Thiele Harvey, Private, United States Marine Corps, Odessa, Texas. Stuart Headley, S-1C, Navy, Buffalo, New York. Clayton Hilliard, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, Kenosha, Wisconsin. Jack Holder, AMM-1 Navy, Newcastle, Texas. William Hook, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, New York, New York. Robert Jackson, SAO 2C, Navy, Monroe, Wisconsin. Robert Kemp, QM-3, Navy, Baltimore, Maryland. Robert Kennedy, E2M2, United States Navy, Electronic Maintenance, Canisteo, New York. Walter Kocher, U.S. Navy, Benton, Pennsylvania. Dean Ladd, Lieutenant Colonel Marines, Spokane, Washington. Elmer Larson, Staff Sergeant, Army Air Corps, Marinette, Wisconsin. Leo Ligoy, RT-3 Navy, Reno, Nevada. Joseph Leonetti, F-1 Class Navy, Chicago, Illinois. Albert Liberator, MOMM-1 Navy, Scranton, Pennsylvania. Donald Long, Commander, Navy, Barnum, Minnesota. Albert Machado, Sergeant, Army Air Corps, New Bedford, Massachusetts. Neil McCallum, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, Candor, North Carolina. Robert McGranahan, S-1C Navy, Albany, New York. Hugh McNaughton, AOM-3C Navy, VPB-27, Portland, Oregon. Donald McPherson, Ensign, U.S. Navy Air Corps, Adams, Nebraska. Jimmy Mansour, Corporal, USAAC, La Crosse, Wisconsin. Charles Montanaro, Oiler, Merchant Marine, San Diego, California. Eugene Morse, EM-3 Navy, Spokane, Washington. Lincoln Mott, RM Tech 3, U.S. Navy, Tuckerton, New Jersey. Gilbert Nadeau, Signalman, 3rd Class Navy, Beverly, Massachusetts.
They were starting to go up in a V, and some guy caught it, and he jumped up. He says, "The war is over!" And all the guys said, "The war is over!" And they all ran for their tent, and they got the M1 rifle. They came out and started squeezing clips and pop, pop, pop into the sky. That's how, I mean, the guys were yeah, they were letting their enthusiasm go, you know. Yeah, it was great. It was great. Wow. And next morning, the officers collected all the rifles. I hate it. I love my rifle. I didn't want to give it back.
Robert Nichols, Machine Gunner, U.S. Navy, North Adams, Massachusetts. William Parsons, Radioman 1st, Navy, May, Idaho. Calvin Pachetta, Chief Gunner, Navy, U.S.S. New Mexico, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Lewis Pederson, Lieutenant Navy, Smiley, Texas. Gerald Pederson, PPC, Marine Corps, Long Beach, California. John Pildner, PFC, Army, North Cumberland, Pennsylvania. William Pinto, Wiper, U.S. Merchant Marine, World War II, U.S. Army, Korean War, Rodeo, California. Douglas Plate, Vice Admiral, San Diego, California. J. Roberts, Coxswain, Navy, Spring City, Texas. Bobby Ross, Head Messman, Merchant Marine, Mobile, Alabama. Kenneth Saff, First Lieutenant, Army Air Force, Kane, Pennsylvania. Philip Sagioni, Seaman, 2nd Class Navy, Wilmington, Delaware. Gilbert Sanchez, 52, 2nd Class Radar, Navy, Coast Guard, Ruth, Nevada. Thomas Schonecker, SN2 Navy, Albany, New York. Gordon Scott, Chief Petty Officer, Navy, San Francisco, California. John Scott, EM-1 Navy, U.S.S. Malloy, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. John Seward, M1C Quartermaster, 1st Class, Navy, Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. Jerry Smith, U.S. Navy, Winsboro, Louisiana. Edward Souza, CRM Chief Radio Man, U.S. Navy, USS Remy, Santa Clara, California. Harold Staggs, Torpedo Man, First Class, Navy, Pasadena, California. Beatrice Thaler, Army Air Corps, Reno, Nevada. Edward Trimper, Corporal, U.S. Marine Corps, North Plainfield, New Jersey. Thomas Voucher, Lieutenant Colonel, Army Air Corps, Mission, Texas. Joe Watson, Fireman First Class, U.S. Navy, Appomattox, Virginia. Kenneth Wells, PFC, 6th Marine Division, Ottawa, Ohio. Robert Wheeler, musician First Class, Navy, San Diego, California.
On Victory Day, I'm waiting to be, I was on Attu, Alaska, in a patrol bombing squadron, the same one I'd been in for 3 years, and we were preparing to be part of the northern invasion force for Japan, but they canceled the northern part. Well, they didn't cancel it. The war was over after the bomb. The victory turned out to be far better than most of us anticipated, because there was a tremendous amount of fatalities forecast for a military assault on Japan.
I think people were so elated they didn't even, think about the future, the after. They were just such a happy, people were just out of it when the war ended. VE Day and VJ Day, God, they were, we weren't here, we were still overseas, but what we saw, and heard, I think people were happy, got rid of that, all the problems, a lot of problems, and then everybody turned to make a life for themselves.
It's no longer an option. That's what Douglas said in his speech that day. He said that the history of trying to solve international relations through war isn't going to be possible anymore. And it isn't possible until we go and not just pursue peace, but peace more than the absence of violence is peace where all people and all nations have the same goals that we have as a nation, but which we have it as a goal, but we haven't put it into practice.
Thank you. All these ladies and gentlemen had indicated a desire to be here today. I'd also like to take a moment to honor the memory of all those World War II veterans who are no longer with us and those who cannot be physically with us today. A special tribute goes out to Art Albert, a World War II crewman of the USS Missouri. You may remember Art. He joined us every year for this commemoration ceremony for the past 18 years, and his goal was to be here for the 75th anniversary as well. Art and the USS Missouri were destined to be linked in memory for all time. On January 29, 1944, the USS Missouri was launched at Brooklyn Naval Shipyard. It was also Art's 17th birthday and the day he reported for duty on board the Mighty Mo. Art witnessed major historical events during his service aboard the ship. Following the kamikaze attack against the Missouri on April 11, 1945, Art helped push the wing of the Japanese airplane into the ocean, suffering minor injuries from the attack. 75 years ago today, on September 2, 1945, Art witnessed Douglas MacArthur pull up on the port side of the ship and depart from his destroyer Tin Can, as Art said, like he was getting out of a taxi in New York City. Art was also part of the crew that carried President Harry Truman to a conference in Rio de Janeiro in 1947. Art served on the mighty Mo until his 21st birthday. Art loves this ship. He was immensely proud to be part of her story, and he looked forward to coming back here every year to remember this special anniversary in world history. He, as well as each of you sitting here today, and the many others that have gone before him, are some of our greatest treasures. Sadly, Art passed away 3 months ago on June 3rd, but we feel his spirit here today and know he is smiling down upon us as we remember his fellow shipmates and all other World War II veterans who fought to protect our freedoms on this historic anniversary. Please join me in a moment of silence to honor this special veteran and someone I'm proud to have called my friend, Art Albert, and all the World War II veterans who've passed away. Thank you so much. We're honored to have many other dignitaries joining us this morning that I'd like to recognize at this time. Please hold your applause until all the parties have been mentioned. Governor David Ige, who will be offering the opening remarks for today's ceremony of commemoration and honor. Our distinguished guest speaker, Admiral Phil Davidson, Commander of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. And delivering the keynote address for today's ceremony is Secretary Mark Esper, the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Please recognize them. I'd now like to take a moment to share a message from Senators Bob and Elizabeth Dole, honorary co-chairpersons of the National 75th Commemoration of the End of World War II. This is their message. When we were invited to co-chair today's commemoration, surrounded by the sacred waters of Pearl Harbor, we knew only the most extraordinary circumstances would keep us from joining you in person. Like everyone, we never imagined such circumstances would come to pass. Please know our hearts are with you this morning, and despite the distance, we are honored to co-chair this momentous occasion alongside our dear friend, Linda Hope. As a combat-wounded soldier, the youngest sister of an Iwo Jima survivor, and two proud advocates for our veterans, their families, and their caregivers, we know well the devastation and tragedy of war. At the same time, we have seen war summon the greatest qualities which humans are capable: courage beyond measure, loyalty beyond words, sacrifice, ingenuity, and endurance beyond imagining. The attack on this harbor echoed across the ocean to the mainland, ringing from coast to coast as a great call to action. When that call was heard, the entire nation responded. Perhaps no generation since our founders better understood that if they attempted to meet the moment while divided, they would not succeed. If they allowed the burden of the war to be shouldered by a precious few, they could not win. And if they did not find their path to victory, the future of our nation and freedom itself might perish from the earth. The World War II generation eliminated one of the greatest threats to peace in the world that the world has ever known. Yet incredibly, that was not all they gave to our nation. Those Americans showed future generations the sacrifice that we must sometimes make to preserve and protect freedom. They demonstrate the insurmountable odds that our country can overcome when we act as one. Most importantly, they provided that even in moments darkened by uncertainty and despair, there is tremendous hope. Through unity, through selflessness, America can always find a way. May God bless the souls who lost their lives in World War II and the service members who restored the world's peace, and may God forever bless the United States of America. Bob and Elizabeth Dole. Next, please join me in welcoming the co-chairs of the 75th World War II Committee, General Darrell Wong and Captain Steve Colon, and other members of the committee. Please stand. We began today's commemoration ceremony at 9:02 a.m., which was the time when the surrender ceremony began to bring an end to the most destructive war in world history. On September 2nd, 1945, it was a cloudy, dreary morning in Tokyo Bay, perfect weather for such a somber ceremony. More than 250 Allied warships encircled the Missouri with over 900 fighters and bombers in the air, representing 10 nations whose forces fought in the war. Top military leaders from the Allied forces and Imperial Japan gathered aboard this magnificent battleship. USS Missouri crew members were jammed together on the decks on all levels and atop the gun turrets, everyone wanting to witness history being made. The world was listening and watching as well, as dozens of news outlets and journalists who recorded the ceremony and captured each moment for future generations to remember for all time. Now, if you're able, please rise for the parading of the colors and remain standing for the performance of our national anthem and Hawaii Pono'i. Colors will be administered by the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command Honor Guard. Our national anthem will be performed by MU-2 Emily Kershaw, along with music by the United States Pacific Fleet Band, and Hawaii Pono'i by the United States Marine Corps Forces Pacific Band, sung by Julius Mina. Today is also a celebrated day in Hawaii's history. On this day, September 2nd, 1838, Queen Liliuokalani was born. She was the last and only queen regnant and the last sovereign monarch of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Color Guard, parade the colors.
Color Guard, attention, forward, march. Left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, left, mark time, march. Left, 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 right, left, left turn, march. Present arms.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order, arms. Ready, two.
Hawaii Pono'i Nana'i Ko
Color guard, post the colors.
Ready, two. Unseat, colors. Forward, march. Left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left. Mark time, march. Left, left. Detail, hold. Right, pace. Ready, hit. Post. Ready, hit. Left, pace. Forward, march. Left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right. Mark time, march. Detail, hold. Colors, face. Forward, march. Left, 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 right, left.
Offering the Queen's Prayer this morning is Marlene Sy. There she is.
Lydia Kamakaeha, Lili Uokalani, our last reigning monarch of Hawaii, born on September 2, 1838. Known as a prolific songwriter, a hymn written by the Queen, known as the Queen's Prayer, on March 22, 1895, while imprisoned in Iolani Palace. She asks for the Lord's protection, mercy, and loving kindness, and forgiveness of those who wronged her. Peace will be our wish, now and forevermore. Amen. O koloha no, aia I kalani, o ko oia ia, he molele hoi, mai nana ino ino, na heva o kanaka, a ka e hui kala, a ma e no, no laila e kaku, malalo ko e ko ma ko maluhia, a mau loa kuno. Amen.
Thank you, Marlene. Please be seated. "75 years ago, the Japanese delegation had no idea what to expect upon boarding the U.S. Missouri to sign the formal documents agreeing to Japan's unconditional surrender to the Allied forces. For nearly 4 years, the war in the Pacific had raged as a series of epic, ferocious, and brutal battles on land at sea and in the air. The United States and Japan were fueled by a deep hatred for each other. Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu and the rest of the Japanese delegation stood across from General Douglas MacArthur as he signed the instrument of surrender as the Supreme Commander of the Allied forces. Then the following countries also signed in this order: Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz for the United States, General Su Hyung Chang for China, Admiral Sir Bruce Fraser for the United Kingdom, Lieutenant General Kuzma Derevyanko for the Soviet Union, General Sir Thomas Blamey for Australia, Colonel Lawrence Moore Cosgrave for Canada, General de Corps d'Armée Philippe Leclerc from France, Lieutenant Admiral C.E.L. Helfrich for the Netherlands, and Vice Air Marshal Leonard M. Isett for New Zealand. The ceremony, though, was not one of vengeance or hatred. Instead, the Japanese delegation heard words advocating for a lasting peace that would plant the seeds for a bond of friendship that has grown stronger with each generation. With the rest of the world listening intently, General MacArthur not only brought an end to the bloodiest war in modern history, he also set the tone for the peace and friendship between the U.S. and Japan that continues 75 years later. We'll now play a video of General MacArthur's remarks from the surrender ceremony. I encourage you to listen carefully to his chosen words and imagine the significance of their meaning when they were delivered, just days after the fighting had ended.
It is my earnest hope, and indeed the hope of all mankind, that from this solemn occasion a better world shall emerge out of the blood and carnage of the past. A world founded upon faith and understanding. A world dedicated to the dignity of man and the fulfillment of his most cherished wish for freedom, tolerance, and justice. As Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, I announce it my firm purpose, in the tradition of the countries I represent, to proceed in the discharge of my responsibilities with justice and tolerance, while taking all necessary dispositions to ensure that the terms of surrender are fully, promptly, and faithfully complied with. Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always. These proceedings are closed.
These proceedings are closed. With those four powerful words, the deadliest war came to an end. At the conclusion of the ceremony, over 900 fighters and bombers that had been in the air over Tokyo Bay dropped down and flew over the Missouri. Fighting for peace came with heavy sacrifices by all, but we would like to offer our eternal gratitude to the memory of all those service members who fought so bravely, often to their death, to make the freedoms we enjoy today possible. Today we gather on was once used as an instrument of war, but has since instead evolved into an altar of peace and reconciliation. I'd like to call upon Steve Colon, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the U.S.S. Missouri Memorial Association and co-chair of the 75th Commemoration Committee, to say a few remarks and introduce our first guest speaker. In 2006, Steve retired as a captain after serving 26 years in the Navy and Navy Reserve. One of his career highlights includes serving aboard the USS Adroit during Operation Desert Storm as the operations officer, as they escorted the USS Missouri into combat operations in support of the ground war and witnessed the mighty battleship's 16-inch guns firing. Steve now serves as president of Hunt Development Group, LLC's Hawaii Division. Please welcome Steve Colon.
Thank you, Mike.
Ship looks great. You should be very proud of your crew. Mr. Secretary, Admiral Davidson, Governor Ige, flag and general officers, distinguished visitors, and most importantly, our World War II veterans, welcome and aloha. On behalf of the USS Missouri Memorial Association, it is an honor to welcome you, as well as those joining us from all over the world, to remember this momentous day in our nation's history. But first, as chairman of this amazing organization, I'd like to take a moment to remember someone who's not here with us today, but I know he's looking down on us. My good friend and mentor and predecessor, Tim Gard, served in this organization for 25 years and was our chairman since 2014. His passion for the Missouri pushed us and encouraged us to ensure the Mighty Mo would be a memorial we could all be proud of. I know how badly Tim wanted to be part of this ceremony, and it still saddens me that we lost him before that could happen. Tim, we miss you. I know you're here with us, though, in spirit. I can't tell you how proud I am of the job our Missouri crew members have done to get this ship ready for today. Those of you who are here with us are witnessing it firsthand, and I hope those watching from their homes can get an idea of the remarkable condition of this historic vessel. Our crew members are committed to preserving this iconic battleship and sharing her story and place in our nation's history. And what a story that is. 75 years ago today, this ship was witness to arguably the most important surrender in our world's history. To our Missouri staff and volunteers, well done on getting her ready for this special occasion. We're grateful for the dedication and commitment to sharing the USS Missouri's story and her place in history. I know these 6 months have been trying on you, and I have to tell you that going forward, we will be sailing into some rough seas. But like the greatest generation before us, I know we will persevere, and someday soon, we'll be welcoming visitors back to see this national treasure. Mahalo nui also to my 75th anniversary World War II Commemoration Committee co-chair, General Darrell Wong, as well as all of our committee members who are here and watching for the hard work in planning these events. It was been a very challenging environment. Bravo Zulu to all of you. To our World War II veterans here and watching from afar, we once again remember and thank you for the sacrifices that you made. We will never forget, and we will always honor your service. So let's go ahead and hear from our distinguished guests who have joined us today. First up will be Governor Ige, who will help reflect and remember on that day in Tokyo and how it resonates for all of us. Both he and Admiral Davidson served as the 75th World War II Commemoration Committee co-chairs, and I was honored to be serving with both of you. Governor Ige is the 8th governor of the state of Hawaii. He's the first governor of Okinawan ancestry. He's also the son of a decorated veteran of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team that fought so heroically in World War II. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me give a warm welcome to Governor David Ige.
Good morning. It is my honor to welcome everyone, both here and across the nation and the world, to the USS Missouri. On this day, on this deck, 75 years ago, we marked the end in the Pacific theater of a great global war that touched every man, woman, and child of my parents' generation. The war took the lives of so many on all sides, leaving a vacuum in the roles of those who could have been, who should have been, our scientists, teachers, community leaders, farmers, and shopkeepers. They should have been our classmates, our neighbors, and our co-workers. They were our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters, and our fathers and mothers. Victory came at a high price, paid by those who suffered and died on the front lines, as well as by those who endured hardship and uncertainty on the home front. It was won by an abiding belief in freedom and democracy, and by the strength of character, courage, and resilience that defied all odds. It was won by a generation defined as the greatest, not only by what they achieved in war, but by the peace and prosperity they created after it. Their legacy is the hope and the world order they passed on to all of us. Like Hawaii's late Senator Danny Noy, my own father, who served in the famed 442nd Regimental Combat Team, they returned home to fulfill the promise of citizenship and contribute to a life where all things are possible for everyone. Like you, I stand on the shoulders of all of these men and women and can stake my claim to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness because of their actions. After the war, they transformed their fight against tyranny into a life based on the democratic values and purpose, showing us that democracy must not only be defended at all costs, but lived along all avenues by you and me doing what we do each and every day. That is vigilance. That is resilience. That is courage. We look at history because it tells us where we've been. We study history because it teaches us how to discover where we want to go. I don't have to tell you that this remembrance has been dramatically scaled back from original plans because of the ongoing pandemic. And perhaps that's for the best. In moments like these, we tend to get caught up in the pomp and circumstance and sometimes forget the real reason why we gather, all of these veterans. Moreover, we tend to toss the label hero around freely these days, but these veterans truly exemplify the strictest definition of heroic. Their actions stand up to the rigid test of the heroic, and their lives set an example for all of us to follow. Some compare fighting a pandemic akin to fighting a global war. That may or may not be an accurate comparison. What I do know is that we cannot go wrong in following their example in the face of any adversity. Their courage under fire, strength of character, resilience over time provides a clear roadmap for us to follow in all that we do, whether we are fighting social injustice or a virus. And so there remains only one thing left for us to say to them. Thank you. Thank you. And we pray they grasp the depth of those words and the immensity of our debt. God bless you all. Thank you and aloha.
Thank you, Governor Ige. I'd also like to recognize Dawn Amano Ige, the governor's wife, who's with us today. Mrs. Ige. General Mark A. Milley, the 20th Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute and to thank our World War II veterans for their bravery and sacrifice in service to our nation. We remain indebted to the veterans whose service demonstrated the selfless action of the greatest generation, who not only served to protect and defend our nation, but were part of the global force to defend peace. Ladies and gentlemen, General Mark Milley, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
The greatest generation that took up arms to defend freedom against tyranny in the Second World War fought for something. They fought for a better peace. And from the ashes of the destruction and bloodshed of that war, that terrible war, they established a rules-based global order rooted in political and economic liberty that has stood for over 7 decades. My father and mother were part of that generation. My father trained here in Hawaii, on Maui, and from here made the assault landings at Kwajalein, Saipan, Tinian, and Iwo Jima with the 4th Marine Division, while my mother served at a Navy hospital in Seattle, taking care of the wounded, coming back from the Pacific Theater. I often reflect on my parents' service to this nation, and the lessons I take from their example have shaped my views on this nation's role and place in the world. My parents instilled in me a sense of service and an understanding of how lucky I am to be an American, how lucky I was to grow up in a country where we have freedoms of speech, press, religion, and all the other rights that we enjoy on a daily basis. Today, those with firsthand knowledge of World War II are becoming fewer and fewer. And so we all must never forget the horrific cost of great power war and the sacrifices of those that went before us. As the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, on behalf of every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, and Coast Guardsman, more than 2.3 million of us that wear the uniform today, we all extend our sincerest thanks to our World War II veterans for granting us the gift of freedom. And we renew our commitment to preserve the Constitution and the values you fought so hard to preserve.
We're honored to have one of our honorary Blue Ribbon Leadership co-chairs with us today, Admiral Philip Davidson, Commander, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, America's oldest and largest military combatant command. As a surface warfare officer, Admiral Davidson has deployed across the globe in frigates, destroyers, cruisers, and aircraft carriers, and he has held command at every level. At U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, he is responsible for all U.S. military activities in the Indo-Pacific, covering 36 nations, 14 time zones, and more than 50% of the world's population. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commander, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Phil Davidson.
Aloha and good morning. I would like to begin by thanking all the members of the 75th World War II Commemoration Committee for safely bringing these phenomenal events together in this environment. We are honored today to have the Secretary of Defense here with us to help commemorate the occasion, as well as his wife, Leah. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We're grateful that you could both be here today. I'd like to thank General Milley for joining us virtually and for his moving remarks. And of course, thank you, Governor Ige, for your inspiring words. They underscore the significance of the state of Hawaii's magnificent relationship with our armed forces. As we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II and our Allied victory in the Pacific, we remain forever indebted to our World War II veterans. They helped defend the world from tyranny. We are deeply honored that those from Hawaii, some of those very same veterans, could join us today in person, with many more joining us virtually around the globe. And indeed, the rest of them are here with us in spirit on the historic deck of the USS Missouri. This battleship, both signal of strength and symbol of peace, owes much of its legacy to the 33rd President of the United States, Harry S. Truman. It was hardly a surprise when President Truman selected the USS Missouri as the formal site to officially end the war. After all, the proud Missouri native's only child, Margaret, served as this ship's sponsor. And President Truman spoke at this ship's christening and also attended her commissioning. Well, one can only imagine how President Truman hoped the pride and joy of his home state would live on in the hearts and minds of Americans for years to come. And I mention this for two important reasons. First, to highlight that the Mighty Mo, this iconic American museum today, is the epitome of the arsenal of democracy that willed us to victory. In part, honoring the men and women of our greatest generation who supported the war effort in factories and shipyards across the country. And of course, the second reason is to provide a clear reminder of how the history of September 2nd, 1945 lives on. September 2nd is the day that the United States and our allies turned tragedy into triumph, violence into victory, fighting into freedom, loss into liberty, and peril into peace. A day that marks the very beginning of the rules-based international order, an order responsible for some 75 years of peace, prosperity, and security that helped not only to liberate hundreds of millions, but to lift billions out of poverty, and all to a level of prosperity previously unseen in human history. Certainly, the post-war period of regional peace and stability must not be taken for granted. Today, the world faces great challenges. You heard Governor Ige talk about the coronavirus pandemic. But as well, an emboldened Communist Party of China seeks to change the world to one in which Chinese national power is more important than international law. Beijing is using a whole-of-party approach to coerce, to corrupt, and to contest the rules-based international order. Today, as we address the strategic threat of China and the other security challenges throughout the Indo-Pacific region, the memory of our greatest generation lives on. It lives on in our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, Marines, and our Coast Guardsmen today. Each and every day, we remember our World War II heroes, and we pay tribute to them by continuing to defend the values of a free and open Indo-Pacific, to keep America, our allies, and our partners free from tyranny, and defend our shared values, our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. May God bless all the veterans of World War II, the men and women of the armed forces, the great state of Hawaii, and indeed, may God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Now, as I mentioned before, we are joined today by the Secretary of Defense, Dr. Mark Esper. Secretary Esper is a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point, Harvard University, and George Washington University. He is a proud Gulf War veteran and former Army infantry officer. From the moment that he assumed office in July of 2019, Secretary Esper has been relentless in implementing our national defense strategy, and he remains committed to focusing the Department of Defense on the Indo-Pacific theater. He joins us today in the midst of his travels throughout the region to engage with allies and partners, observe high-end military exercises, meet with our service members, and of course, today to honor our veterans. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, the 27th Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Dr. Mark Esper.
Aloha, everyone. And thank you for joining us on this special day. Thank you, Admiral Davidson, for that kind introduction. Thank you, General Milley, for your words. And thank you, Governor Ige, for the warm welcome and hospitality. On behalf of President Trump, thank you all for being here today. It is my great honor to be on the deck of this historic ship as we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II and commemorate and reflect on the sacrifices and victories of our service members and allies who helped fight for and secure peace. I would like to extend a very special welcome to the members of the greatest generation here with us this morning, whose remarkable stories of courage and heroism are forever etched into our nation's heart and history. It is because of your selfless service and your sacrifice that we live in peace and prosperity today. And it is your legacy that inspires us in our efforts to uphold the freedoms and values for which you so nobly fought. Thank you all very much. It is fitting that we are gathered here today on USS Missouri, where the conflict in the Pacific came to an end on this day in 1945. This ship, which was built for war, has since been dedicated to peace and reconciliation. It now rests in the very harbor where more than 2,400 Americans paid the ultimate price nearly 8 decades ago at the beginning of World War II. This morning, we pay tribute to all those we lost on that infamous date in 1941, and to the millions more who demonstrated our collective resolve and commitment to freedom in the years of war and hardship that followed. We remember heroes like Floyd Welch, an electrician's mate who helped save the lives of more than 30 sailors trapped in the sinking USS Oklahoma. With pinpoint precision, he cut holes in the ship's hull, freeing the sailors without igniting fuel cells. And we honor sailors like Mess Attendant Dory Miller, the namesake of the Navy's newest aircraft carrier. Miller assisted his mortally wounded captain aboard the USS West Virginia, then manned an anti-aircraft gun, and with no formal training, blunted the onslaught of enemy fighters and bombers. Since then, the memory of these men and those we lost in the attack on December 7th has served as an eternal reminder of the consequences of war, the human toll and tragedy, the debt paid in freedom's name, and the imperative of remaining ever vigilant. Throughout the war, millions of our countrymen answered the nation's call with great courage and selflessness. Americans of all faiths, races, and ethnicities, from all walks of life and vocation, rich to poor, and from all corners of the country, from cities to suburbs to farms. They left behind their loved ones, men and women alike, to sail across oceans and join allies in a desperate fight for liberty. From the deserts of Tunisia to the islands of Midway, and from the beaches of Normandy to the hills of Iwo Jima. these intrepid patriots stood arm in arm and shoulder to shoulder with our allies, determined to achieve total victory no matter how long it took. Meanwhile, on the home front, millions of other Americans served as civil defense volunteers, learning essential skills such as first aid, air defense, and firefighting. Many more bought war bonds, rationed consumer goods, and recycled scarce materials. Entrepreneurs, innovators, and production workers transformed assembly lines and industrial plants into the arsenal of democracy, ensuring military production kept pace with the needs of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen. And most importantly, though often separated by great distances and different challenges, the American people forged an unbreakable commitment to the cause of liberty, one that lives on to this day. World War II was an inflection point for the history of our great nation and for humanity writ large. The global fight against tyranny and oppression cost more than 70 million lives and caused unimaginable loss for the United States and our allies. Virtually no household was left untouched by the scale or scope of its wanton destruction. The human toll of the deadliest conflict in history led to the creation of a new world out of the rubble of the old, one that began with Imperial Japan's surrender on this ship 75 years ago. The war fundamentally altered the global balance of power and reshaped the international order into one led by like-minded nations, grounded in common purpose and shared values that prepared them well for a decades-long struggle against Soviet communism that would soon follow. In the aftermath of World War II, the United States assumed the mantle and the responsibility of leadership, recognizing that the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans would no longer protect us from conflicts started abroad, from ideologies with hegemonic ambitions, or from governments with malign intentions. It was America's time to lead, and we did so, guided by our founding principles and core values. The United States rose to the challenge. We built relationships with like-minded nations based on reciprocal trade, not predatory economics, based on respect for the sovereignty of all countries, not a strategy of might makes right, based on a commitment to always honoring our international obligations, not just when they serve our interests, and most importantly, based on our enduring values and beliefs. The result was today's international rules-based order that has provided security, prosperity, and stability to billions of people around the world for over a half-century. It set new standards and protocols when it comes to matters of trade and diplomacy. It raised the bar when it comes to human rights and individual freedoms. And it created new expectations regarding the use of force and the way countries should treat one another. Today, in the face of new challenges to this free and open order, we are working to build an even broader coalition of partners, one that includes both longtime friends and former adversaries, to protect the hard-fought gains of generations past and present, especially in the Pacific. We share an important goal, defending the sacred principles that benefit us all: democracy, liberty, sovereignty, human rights, mutual respect, and the rule of law. To do so, we continue to forge new partnerships and strengthen our existing ones. From our alliances with Japan, South Korea, and Australia, to our long collaboration with ASEAN countries, India, New Zealand, and the Pacific Island countries. Growing, deepening, and unifying this network must remain central to our collective strategy to ensure peace and prosperity for another 75 years and beyond. We welcome every nation, especially those that have benefited most from today's international system, to join us in this effort. For decades, the United States and our partners have based our efforts on the belief that today's free and open order, however imperfect, is worth fighting for. And while this system has largely remained intact, we cannot take it for granted or leave its future up to chance. That is why, together, we are committed to improving it and remain ready to defend it, much like the greatest generation did when history called and fate challenged. 75 years ago today, the great American naval hero, Admiral Chester Nimitz, sent a message to the Pacific Fleet regarding the end of the war. He reflected on the heavy cost of victory and our solemn obligation to the fallen, which was, in his words, quote, the obligation to ensure that their sacrifice will help to make this a better and safer world in which to live. Our work today continues in this spirit. As we look to the path ahead, we honor the legacy of those who came before us and recommit ourselves to defending today's international rules and norms so that the world is safer and is better for generations yet to come. This means embracing the importance of what President Ronald Reagan called peace through strength and building a military and alliance structure to match that imperative. The United States' commitment to the world today is the same one we made to the freedom-loving people of the world in 1941, that we will remain ready to fight any foe and defend any friend, and that we will safeguard our values and all that we hold dear at every turn, in every place. We will not back down, and we will not yield. Freedom is far too precious to do otherwise, and the sacrifice of those who came before us is far too great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for commemorating this historic anniversary with us today. May God bless the members of the greatest generation and all of our veterans, service members, and allies across the globe. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Secretary Esper, for today, and also like to acknowledge his wife, Leah, who is joining us this morning. And thank you, Admiral Davidson. We'd also like to acknowledge your wife, Tracy, who is also with us today. There's actually a third reason why the Davidsons are so fond of this ship. That's because they're both from St. Louis, Missouri. As such, they love this ship. Our thanks also go out to Gerald Wilson, a retired petty officer, first class for the United States Navy, and his wonderful performance of an iconic song that's an inspiring favorite for us all. On an early Sunday morning on September 2nd, 1945, aboard the new 45,000-ton battleship USS Missouri and before representatives of 9 allied nations, the Empire of Japan signed a written agreement that formalized the end of hostilities in World War II. In honoring of our shared history, the following nations have placed wreaths on the deck of the USS Missouri as a sign of respect and tribute to the men and women who lost their lives during World War II. Australia, Brunei Darussalam, Canada, France, Federal Germany, Japan, Myanmar, New Zealand, the Philippines, Portugal, Russia, Singapore, South Korea, United Kingdom, and the United States of America. Offering flowers is a ritual that occurs around the world, symbolizing the beauty and brevity of life. As we honor the past, let us remember that what defines our relationships with our allies and partners is a deep-rooted mutual trust, friendship, support, and cooperation. It was our collective commitment and sacrifice during World War II that established the foundations of the free and open Indo-Pacific that benefits all nations today. As we look to secure our future, let us reaffirm our commitment to maintain a peaceful and prosperous world. We now wish to remember all those service members who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our country and to the freedoms that all of us enjoy. We'd like to ask all of you who are able to please stand for this portion of the program as we pay tribute to all fallen service members. First, with a moment of silence, followed by a rifle salute. Thank you. Please be seated. As our ceremony draws to a close, we thank all of you for joining us this morning to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. Thank you to our guest speakers, Governor Ige, Admiral Davidson, Secretary Esper. And a special thanks to our 75th World War II commemoration sponsors, including presenting sponsor, the Bob Hope Legacy, as part of the Bob and Dolores Hope Foundation, who made the vision and commitment of this ceremony possible.
It gives me great pleasure to share a welcoming message from Linda Hope of the Bob Hope Legacy, representing the Bob and Dolores Hope Foundation. Their generous support of the World War II 75th commemoration ensures that the legacy of all veterans continues to inspire and motivate our children, those who are destined to lead our future.
World War II was a pivotal moment in American and world history. When the freedom of the world was threatened, millions of Americans rose to its defense. They fought in combat in Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific, helped build the arsenal of democracy in our factories, and raise the spirits of our troops, as my dad Bob Hope and many of his fellow entertainers did. Everyone played a role in achieving victory and establishing an enduring peace. Bob Hope, with a small band of performers, traveled to bases throughout the U.S. and around the globe to entertain our service members, visiting hospitals and installations in theaters of war in Europe and the South Pacific. Travel to those distant locations was grueling, and the conditions upon arrival were often dangerous. Yet those were the shows most near and dear to Bob's heart, and to the hearts of the hundreds of thousands of troops who never forgot the taste of home and hope he brought them. As we commemorate 75 years since the end of World War II, we salute our service members and the everyday Americans who contributed to the war effort for their heroic actions. Their patriotism still inspires us and will continue to inspire Americans forever. We promise to carry their stories forward, instilling in our future leaders a new appreciation for the sacrifices made by the entire generation that truly defined the spirit of America.
Most of all, we'd like to thank all of our veterans who've protected our country and its people, as well as the men and women who are currently serving in the armed forces, for displaying courage and commitment to duty at all times. Our nation honors you and your continued perseverance to protect our freedoms. Here at the Battleship Missouri Memorial, we always stand with you and remain firmly dedicated to upholding the values confirmed on this day 75 years ago. Please stand for the benediction by Captain Jim Edwards, U.S. Marine Corps Forces Pacific Chaplain.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we have commemorated this morning the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War on this historic battleship. We have remembered those who served their country with distinction during years of hard-fought battles at sea, under the sea, on land, and in the sky above. We have remembered, too, those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, not only for their country, but also for the friends fighting at their side, and for the freedoms that we still hold most dear. We thank you, God, for the inspiration of those who went before us. May we leave this place with a greater appreciation of the examples set for us by the veterans that fought so valiantly throughout the Second World War. We also thank you for peace, a peace that we continually seek to preserve. So as we leave this site of honor, grant us now your peace and your blessing. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Captain Edwards. Please be seated. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Ed Hawkins of the City and County of Honolulu on behalf of the City of Nagaoka.
We will now see fireworks that were launched last night as a gift from the city of Nagaoka, Japan. Nagaoka is a sister city of Honolulu. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, a native of Nagaoka, planned the attack on Pearl Harbor. Nagaoka was devastated by American bombers in the waning days of World War II. These fireworks are to underscore peace and reconciliation between Japan and the United States since the end of World War II. 3 white chrysanthemum-shaped fireworks will be launched. First, in honor of the greatest generation, those who served, who brought peace to the world through their service and sacrifice in this great war. Second, in honor of all those who gave their last full measure of service, who gave their lives to secure the peace that we enjoy today. Third, hope for continued peace in the world and for the future of our children and our children's children so that they may enjoy the blessings of peace and freedom.
Mahalo for joining us at this historic occasion this morning. If I could ask if you could all wait for our World War II veterans to exit first and then proceed after them. Ladies and gentlemen, these proceedings are closed.
Thank you for joining us for our special coverage of the 75th year since the end of World War II. We want to thank all of our veterans, our service members, and the members from the greatest generation in our nation for the sacrifices that they made. We're going to have continuing coverage on air starting at 5 p.m. as well as throughout the day online at hawaiinewsnow.com. We now return you to our regularly scheduled programming.